Have you ever sat alone wondering when your children stopped listening to you? When your calls started going unanswered? When your opinions stopped mattering? You spent years putting them first, sacrificing, supporting, showing up without hesitation, and now it feels like you're the only one still showing up. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. And more importantly, you don't have to stay in that place. In this video, we're going to talk about what to do when your children don't respect you anymore. Not by yelling, not by guilt tripping, but by shifting how you carry yourself. Because respect doesn't come from demanding it. It comes from becoming someone who naturally commands it. I'm going to walk you through 6 powerful changes, practical, honest, and deeply empowering, that will help you regain your children's respect and, more importantly, reconnect with your own self-worth. We'll talk about how to stop giving when it's not appreciated, how to enforce boundaries, how to detach emotionally without withdrawing your love, and how to build a life that's full, whether your children show up or not. This isn't about punishing them, it's about honoring you. So if you're ready to stop waiting for respect and start earning it again, quietly, confidently, and with grace, stay right here. Let's begin. Action 1. Let go of the need for their validation. As parents grow older, many fall into a subtle trap, seeking validation from their adult children. You might catch yourself doing things just to win their favor. Overextending your time, saying yes when your heart says no, making sacrifices they never asked for, hoping that if you just give a little more, they'll finally recognize your worth. But the uncomfortable reality is this: the more you pursue their validation, the more they lose respect for you. Respect isn't built on appeasement, it's built on authenticity. If you're constantly prioritizing their comfort over your truth, what you're showing them is that your own voice doesn't matter. And when that becomes the norm, they begin to treat you accordingly, like someone who doesn't need to be heard. I know this because I've lived it. There was a time I rearranged everything, my schedule, my energy, even my emotions, just to make things easier for my children. I kept quiet when they dismissed my opinions. I bit my tongue when they crossed a line, and I told myself it was all just part of being a good parent. I wanted to stay close, to avoid conflict, to be loved. But over time, I noticed something painful. The more I gave, the more invisible I became. They stopped asking what I needed. They assumed I'd always say yes. And when I finally tried to express myself, it was like my words didn't carry any weight. I thought I was preserving peace, but I was really silencing myself. And once I realized that, I had to make a change. I started saying no when I meant it. I started expressing my opinions, even if they ruffled feathers. At first it was uncomfortable, but eventually I saw something shift. They began to listen. Not always agree, but listen. Because I was no longer chasing approval. I was standing in my truth. Here's what I've learned. Your children don't need a version of you that bends and breaks just to stay in their good graces. They need the real you, the one with a spine, a soul, and a standard. Love doesn't mean losing yourself, and respect doesn't come from sacrifice. It comes from self-regard. Show them that your voice matters, not through arguments or ultimatums, but through the quiet, steady act of honoring yourself. That's where real change begins. Action 2. Don't argue, lead through presence. There's a moment, especially as a parent of adult children, when you realize your voice no longer carries the same weight it once did. They interrupt you mid-sentence, wave off your perspective, or respond with sarcasm instead of respect. And your natural instinct is to push back. Raise your voice, explain your worth, remind them of the sacrifices you've made. But let me share something hard-earned. Arguing only drains you. It doesn't restore the respect you're looking for. Let's be honest, when was the last time a heated argument made someone truly value you more? Words, especially when laced with emotion, rarely change hearts. What does? Quiet, unwavering self-respect. People don't respect you because you demand it. They respect you because of how you show up when it's being withheld. Calm, steady, and unapologetically grounded. For years, I fell into that trap myself. Every time one of my children dismissed something I said or responded with condescension, I'd engage. I thought if I just reasoned enough, explained enough, they'd understand. I remember one specific evening when my youngest laughed at something I said during a serious conversation. I snapped. We argued for an hour, nothing changed. But one day, I stopped. I decided I wouldn't argue anymore. I didn't announce it, I just practiced it. The next time they brushed me off, I responded with stillness. I set a boundary with calm clarity and walked away from the conversation. No yelling, no proving, just presence. And that moment, though small, created a shift I didn't expect. They began to notice that I wasn't trying to win anymore. I was simply being consistent in how I carried myself. Over time, they adjusted. They listened longer. They spoke more carefully. They stopped testing me as often. Not because I forced them to, but because I gave them no chaos to resist. I gave them stillness they couldn't ignore. If you feel overlooked or disrespected, don't meet it with arguments. Meet it with composure. Show them how a person of self-respect behaves. Let your actions speak more than your explanations. Let your tone communicate your boundaries. And most importantly, let your energy declare, I will not be diminished. Imagine this. Your child, years from now, faced with a moment where someone disrespects them. And instead of lashing out or shrinking back, they respond with quiet certainty, because they remember how you handled yourself. Without a lecture, without drama, you showed them how to stand tall. And that silent lesson, etched in time, becomes your greatest legacy. In a world full of noise, your strength will be in your calm. Your presence will teach more than your words ever could. One day they'll look back, not at what you said, but at how you held yourself, and realize you were never asking for respect. You were embodying it. Action 3. Break free from emotional reliance. It's natural to want to feel needed by your children, especially after years of dedicating yourself to their well-being. But clinging to that need can quietly erode the very bond you cherish. Emotional dependence creates an invisible weight on your relationship, and unless you let go, it will quietly push your children away. Take the story of Maya Angelou, the legendary poet and activist. In her later years, she openly spoke about learning to embrace her own emotional independence, even from her loved ones. Despite her profound impact and the love she inspired, she knew not to rely on others to define her worth. This freedom allowed her to maintain deep connections without the pressure of needing constant reassurance or validation, demonstrating that emotional strength creates respect, not distance. One of the toughest truths we face as we age is realizing that our emotional well-being cannot be tethered to our children. You may cherish them endlessly and yearn for their love and respect, but the instant they sense you depend on them for your self-worth, the balance of the relationship shifts dramatically. Here's the hard reality. Genuine respect comes from those who carry their own emotional strength. When you lean on your children for constant validation, affection, or attention, it burdens them rather than brings them closer. Instead of gratitude, they may feel pressured or overwhelmed. They might start to distance themselves, responding with impatience or indifference. Ironically, the more you pursue their love, the less freely it flows. Imagine a mother named Sarah. She spent decades devoted to her children, always available and attentive. As they moved into adulthood and busier lives, she found herself waiting by the phone, longing for their calls. When they didn't come, she called them frequently, reminding them how much she missed them and wished for more visits. But rather than drawing them closer, her constant reaching out created a sense of obligation instead of warmth, causing them to pull away emotionally. Then Sarah made a conscious change. She stopped initiating contact and focused on building her own life, pursuing hobbies, reconnecting with friends, and nurturing her happiness. Slowly, something remarkable happened. Her children began reaching out on their own. They started respecting her time and space, appreciating her as a person with a fulfilling life outside of their relationship. The takeaway is clear. When you stop depending on your children to fulfill your emotional needs, you invite a more authentic bond. Showing them you stand strong on your own terms cultivates respect that is not forced, but earned through admiration of your self-sufficiency. Moreover, this emotional independence models an essential lesson for your children, that self-worth comes from within, not from others' approval. It frees them from the weight of feeling responsible for your happiness and empowers them to build their own meaningful lives without guilt or obligation. Finally, by focusing on your own growth and joy, you reclaim your identity beyond parenthood. This not only revitalizes your spirit, but also enriches your relationship with your children, allowing it to evolve into one grounded in mutual respect, love, and genuine connection rather than neediness or dependency. Action 4. Establish clear boundaries and stand your ground. A major reason parents lose the respect of their children is simply because they permit it to happen. When you let your kids interrupt you, dismiss your feelings, or treat your time and presence as unimportant, they will continue those behaviors. Not out of malice, but because family often treats us according to the limits we set for them. Setting boundaries isn't about shutting your kids out or sparking constant arguments. It means defining calmly but firmly what behavior is acceptable and what isn't, and crucially, following through consistently when those lines are crossed. I once heard about Robert, a retired entrepreneur who had led his business with authority and clear expectations. Yet with his adult children, he found himself frequently disregarded. They interrupted his conversations, ignored his concerns, and openly judged his lifestyle choices. At first, Robert brushed it off, thinking it was easier to avoid conflict. But he soon recognized that every time he let it slide, he was effectively training them that such disrespect was permissible. Then Robert decided to change course. When his son cut him off mid-sentence, he responded calmly, "I'll speak when you're ready to listen." When his daughter dismissed his viewpoint, he said, "You don't have to agree, but respect is non-negotiable." And when they continued to test boundaries, Robert made it clear, if respect wasn't reciprocated, he wouldn't spend time with them. What followed was a gradual but unmistakable shift. Though initially resistant, his children began to listen more carefully. They realized their father was serious about valuing himself and that demanding respect wasn't a battle, but a boundary of self-worth. And because of that, they adjusted their behavior. Here's another example that might resonate. Maria, a single mother of 2 teenagers, struggled with her son's habit of interrupting and talking back during family dinners. At first, she ignored it, hoping it would pass, but it only grew worse. Then one evening, Maria calmly said, "I want to hear your thoughts, but if you interrupt me, I'll stop talking until you're ready to listen." The first few times, her son tested her, but Maria stayed consistent. Within weeks, dinner conversations became more respectful, and her son began to express himself without hostility. Remember, respect isn't something that is just given freely. It's earned through how you allow yourself to be treated. If you don't draw firm lines, others will push right past them. And if you don't protect your own dignity, no one else will take on that role. Furthermore, boundaries are acts of love, both for yourself and your family. They create a safe, emotional space where honest, respectful communication can flourish. When children understand the limits, they feel secure knowing what's expected, which paradoxically often leads to deeper connection, not distance. So setting and enforcing boundaries isn't about building walls, it's about building a foundation where respect grows, relationships strengthen, and everyone learns the value of mutual honor. Action 5. Stop giving without appreciation. One of the fastest ways to lose respect is by continuously giving to people who never appreciate it. As parents, this is something we do far more often than we realize. We offer our time, our energy, our support, sometimes even when it goes unnoticed, sometimes when it's taken for granted, and sometimes when all we get back is entitlement. Here's the hard truth. When you give to someone who doesn't value it, you're not building love or respect. Instead, you're creating an expectation. They stop viewing your kindness as a gift and begin to see it as something owed. And the moment you pull back, they don't feel gratitude. They feel inconvenienced. In my experience, I used to constantly volunteer for everything my kids needed, from attending every school event to staying up late helping with projects. I rarely said no, wanting to be the supportive parent who was always available. But over time, I noticed the gratitude wasn't there. Instead, it felt like my efforts were just the baseline. Never enough, always expected. When I finally decided to step back and say no to some things, it wasn't easy. There was pushback, some guilt on my end, and resistance from the kids. But after a while, things changed. My children started to recognize and appreciate when I was present, and I found more balance and respect in our relationship. If you feel like your generosity is met with entitlement rather than gratitude, it's time to pause and evaluate. Are you giving more than you should? And if so, what might change if you stopped? Generosity must be balanced with self-respect. When you make your giving conditional on respect and appreciation, you teach your children the value of your time and effort. This is how respect is earned, not demanded, but cultivated through healthy boundaries. Remember, giving isn't a weakness. It's a strength that becomes powerful only when paired with clear limits. By protecting your own needs, you don't diminish your love. You deepen it, and you invite others to honor it as well. Action 6, build a life outside of them. Imagine this. Your phone hasn't rung all week. You scroll through old photos, wondering when your children stopped reaching out. You don't want to bother them, but deep down you feel forgotten. You sacrificed everything for them. Your time, your energy, your dreams. And now, you're just waiting for a text, a visit, a moment. But the more you wait, the more it feels like life is passing you by. If that feeling resonates, it's time to change the story. One of the most overlooked ways to earn your children's respect is to show them that your life doesn't orbit around theirs. As parents, it's easy to make our children the center of everything, to sacrifice, to serve, to support. But if that becomes your only identity, especially later in life, you risk becoming invisible. Not out of malice, but because people, even your own children, tend to devalue what seems dependent. The truth is, people respect those who stand on their own. When your children see you pursuing your own interests, building friendships, chasing passions, and staying engaged with life, they see you as whole. But when you act like their lives are your only source of meaning, they may begin to feel burdened. Or worse, start to dismiss you as someone who no longer has their own story to live. I once met a man named Victor, a retired school principal. After retiring, he focused solely on his adult sons, calling daily, showing up unannounced, offering advice for problems they hadn't shared. His intentions were loving, but the effect was stifling. His sons began dodging his calls, making excuses, and eventually told him, kindly but firmly, that they needed space. Victor was heartbroken, but it forced him to reflect. So he made a change. He started coaching a local youth basketball team, joined a photography class, and began hiking with a group of other retirees. He didn't do it to win back his son's attention. He did it to reclaim his own sense of self. And without trying, he got exactly that. His sons started calling again. They asked about his photos, his games, his trips. They weren't pulling away anymore. They were leaning in. Here's the irony. The more you cling, the more they pull back. But when you build a rich, independent life, you become someone they admire rather than manage. You show them what aging with dignity looks like. If your children don't seem to respect you, ask yourself honestly, are you showing them a life that commands it? Are you modeling independence, growth, and self-worth? Because when you stop waiting for them to fill your days and start filling them yourself, they won't just respect you more. They might even wish they had more of your time. And most importantly, you'll feel alive again. Not just as a parent, but as a person, because you deserve more than to wait on the sidelines of your own life. You deserve to live it, fully, freely, and without apology. That brings us to the end of this video. 6 meaningful steps that can help you regain not only your children's respect, but also a deeper respect for yourself. If your relationship with your children has left you feeling unseen or unappreciated, remember, you don't need to fight, plead, or explain yourself over and over. Real change begins when you change how you show up. When you carry yourself with quiet strength, when you draw healthy lines, and when you start living for you, people take notice, including your children. And even if they don't change right away, you will. You'll feel more peace, more power, and more pride in the way you live your life. So if this message resonated with you, I hope you take it to heart. It's never too late to shift the dynamic. It's never too late to be treated with the respect you deserve, and it's certainly never too late to live a life that feels fulfilling, with or without anyone else's approval. If this video helped you in any way, please tap the like button, share it with someone who may need to hear this, and subscribe for more empowering content. Before you go, leave a comment below. What's one change you're going to make starting today? Your voice matters, and your story might encourage someone else. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourself, and never forget your worth.